Hi and welcome everyone. Lisa here for Whimsy Stamps. Thanks for taking the time to join me. So today it's going to be all about leftovers. When I'm creating a card or doing a video process, I always usually end up with extra little stamped images left over. And what I have here are the pieces left over from previous videos using the Fill a Holiday Truck stamp set. So I thought, you know what, today is the perfect day to talk about using leftovers. The images are colored. The only thing I have left to do are the bows on the wreaths. And I decided that we would actually do a little bit of masking with those and create some plaid bows. We've been doing some plaid trucks, so let's do some plaid bows today. I'm also going to be using this seasonal tree stamp set and, of course, that awesome micro pattern stamp set. First thing I want to do is work on masking off my wreaths so that we can stamp those. I'm going to go ahead and create a mask. I'm stamping the wreath from the Fill a Holiday Truck stamp set onto a piece of Avery removable label. Now you can use any masking paper that you have. What I'm doing is I'm cutting the bow away from my wreath. And I want to cover up the wreath and leave the bow exposed because that's what we're going to be stamping our image on. Once I've fussy cut the bow off, we're going to go ahead and mask off one of the wreaths. We have our wreath masked off and we have it in our MISTI. We're stamping the micro pattern plaid stamp with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now I did stamp it twice, but I'm only showing you once. And we're going to do all three wreaths the same way. And here's a quick look at what it looks like once you stamp that plaid pattern. We're going to set our images aside for now and we're going to focus on our background. Now we're creating a tree lot for our background and I'm going to use the seasonal trees stamp set for that. I'm going to go ahead and grab those trees out and lay them down on my paper and lift them with the lid of the MISTI. We're going to do some embossing with this, so I need to put down some anti-static powder. Now I keep my anti-static powder in a jar. It's just an cosmetic jar with a little sponge applicator on the top there. There's a hole in there that lets the anti-static powder come through to that sponge applicator, and then I just pounce it up and down, rub it across my paper, and I'm ready to do some heat embossing. I love that little jar. Now that we have this ready, we're going to go ahead and start stamping. Now I'm using VersaFine Clair inks for this because I am going to do some heat embossing. And with the VersaFine Clair inks, they are the perfect ink for heat embossing. I'm going to stamp all three sets of the trees. I'm doing 3 of these on my paper. And this ink will stay wet long enough for me to emboss it, but it dries fast enough to the touch so that you don't end up smearing it all over everything. I love this ink for heat embossing, and we're going to be using some clear sparkle wow embossing powder over this. Let's go ahead and stamp these trees using Shady Lane VersaFine Clair inks, and then we'll add our embossing powder over them. You watched me stamp all 3 sets of those trees at one time. I do want to show you that the ink stays wet long enough to grab a hold of the powder and hang on to it. It's really important when you're heat embossing to have full coverage of your image, or you're going to get this very textured look. Your whole image is not going to be embossed. There's only going to be parts of it. You've probably seen that in some embossing, and it's just where there's areas of the ink that have dried before the powder was applied. But with this VersaFine Clair ink, it stays wet long enough to hold on to all of that powder. So we're going to go ahead with a preheated heat gun. Now you see I have my paper laying flat on my desk. I have a silicone heat resistant mat underneath my paper. I leave that mat down all the time. It's what I craft on. It's an amazing mat. It's actually made for your kitchen, and I have purchased several of these, and I actually use them in my kitchen as well as in my craft room because they're heat resistant up to 420 some degrees. So they're perfect for heat embossing on. I've also found that by keeping my paper laying flat while I'm heating it to set that embossing powder, I don't have nearly as much warping with my paper as when I would pick it up and hold on to it. I've found that that's a plus as well. Plus, I'm not burning my fingers, and we all love that, right? So now that we have our powder set, now one thing I want to tell you, I see a lot of people shaking that heat gun back and forth. You don't need to shake your heat gun back and forth. You just want to chase that powder while it's melting slowly. And a steady, slow motion works great. And you can see there, I have this gorgeous embossing. I went ahead and I ran my heat embossed background through my die cutting machine using the largest tapered layer die. Those are new, they just released. If you haven't seen them, hop over there and check it out. Now I'm applying white pigment ink in the center of my panel, and I found that by applying that white pigment ink, it helps me maintain this glow that I'm going for in the center. And it also helps me to blend my distress oxides into that white area a little bit better. I'm starting with tumbled glass, then go ahead and work into the distress oxide and prize ribbon, and then we'll add a little bit of the chip sapphire around the very edges of this panel. And once we're done with that, I will go ahead and wipe all of the excess white off of my heat embossed trees, because that heat embossing is going to resist that ink. So we'll be able to go in with a clean, dry cloth and lightly just wipe away. Now, I do want to tell you, when you are wiping ink off of the heat embossed areas, to be very light-handed with it and have patience, because if you rub on it too hard, it takes the shine away from your embossing, and you don't want to do that. I'm being light-handed with it, and you can see I'm just lightly removing that ink, and then I also rub over the whole panel to pick up any excess ink. So mounting foam to the back of our heat embossed ink blended background, and we're going to add that to our 3.5 by 8.5 inch card base. I ran that card base through the die cutting machine in the Dots embossing folder. Now that's a new embossing folder from Whimsy. It's going to be amazing throughout the whole year, and you can check it out over on their website. And I also wanted to let y'all know, I'm sure you already do, but Whimsy is having a Black Friday sale if you want to hop over and check that out. It's only for 36 hours, and it started Thanksgiving Day, which was yesterday, at noon. So you don't have much time left to hop over there and grab what you need for 25% off. Now, I decided I wanted to add some snow to my scene, so of course I grabbed my favorite Zig cartoonist pen, and I use this pen mostly for splatters, but you can also use it to add white details to your images or scenes. But I have found that it gives me the perfect white splatters just by tapping it on the side of my finger. So while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and stamp Merry Christmas on this little placard I have here, and I'm going to place that on the back of my truck once we start to set the scene. Now, this new stamp set is the Merry Christmas Assortment Sentiment Set from Whimsy. It's a mouthful. And I'm loving it. I love all the different fonts in it. I love the different sizes. I mean, it's the only Merry Christmas stamp set you need as far as that sentiment goes, in my opinion. I don't see me ever needing a different Merry Christmas. It covers everything. We're going to go ahead and stamp this small Merry Christmas onto this placard, and I'm using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink for that. And then we'll set that to the side and start to build our scene. Here's my scene. It's all set. I used foam adhesive strips to add all the pieces to the front of the card. You can see I have some thin strips of black cardstock here that I've cut. They're about 1/4 of an inch wide. And I'm going to trim the bottom of those off. I want them to look like they're sitting in the snow instead of on top of the snow. So I'm going to come in with my T ruler and add some little tick marks along the bottom of those, so they're lining up with the bottom of my trees. And then I'm just going to bring my scissors in and snip those bottoms off. There you can see where I cut the bottom of the post off. Now you could do a wood grain post if you wanted to, color it with your markers to create that wood grain, run it through an embossing folder that has wood grain. It's completely up to you. I just decided to use the black cardstock. I had a scrap piece and I thought, it'll just tie in with the black and the bows and it'll be fine. I also went over and added some more splatter, as you can see. And since this video was all about the leftovers, I actually had some snowflakes left over, so I grabbed those and decided to add those to my scene as well. I really do appreciate you guys so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying your weekend. For more information on the products you've seen in the video, you can click the links directly below and hop over to the Whimsy Stamps website. Don't forget, you don't have too much longer to shop that Black Friday sale. Until next time, please take care.